Hello everyone, it's me, MJ, here with Alex Storm, and we're getting ready to discuss The Jinx. Now, as always, if you haven't seen the show, go check it out, come back, because it's going to involve spoilers, though I question how spoiler-ish something can be when it's a documentary, but I digress. So, Alex, we just watched it. What do you think of the show?
Everyone should watch The Jinx. It's really entertaining, and it also points out so much of what is wrong with our justice system. Because if you have money, you can get away with anything. You don't even have to be smart. You need to be white, and you need to have money.
Wow.
And you're good.
Are you saying Robert Durst wasn't smart? Is that what you're saying?
I don't know how intelligent he was. I honestly, I questioned it throughout the movie. I don't feel like he covered his tracks, but he got other people involved, which I think if you're going to murder somebody, you shouldn't have anybody else involved. You shouldn't have anybody else know that you're murdering people.
Yeah, that might help.
Yeah, and ultimately, he wasn't. Yeah, he didn't do things smartly. Like, when he threw out the bags of the body, they floated. Duh. What do you think was going to happen? And he's like, oh, this is really a problem. Like, I didn't think that these bags would float. What am I going to do about this? But, I mean, I guess he was smart to take the one piece of evidence that could have gotten him in trouble. But
I mean, you consider that, like, his story about where he shot the head, since he didn't actually, we're going to assume he didn't actually shoot the head where he says he shot it, to take the head, period. It was almost like accidental brilliance, because really I think he just took the head to make sure no one could easily identify the body.
Yeah,
but it
he
just
didn't
so happens
think about the fact that would be what would incriminate him.
Yeah,
later
so
on.
the lawyers are the ones who they were like, oh, okay, so the head's missing. All right, so we need to make a story that's all about the head and what happened with the head.
And I also
so there's no way they can prove it.
He, throughout the entire thing, he's lying, obviously, and he's lied forever about all these murders, and his lies aren't even good. Like, he admits that he's lying. I feel like if you've planned out your murders and you've executed them and you've been cool for 20 years, why admit you were lying about shit? Like, why not be like, oh yeah, I did call my wife, like, after she left that night, I talked to her. It was no big deal. Like, why later on, why 30 years later be like, oh, I didn't call her, I just wanted them to not really bother me. Like, why do that if you're halfway intelligent?
Well, I don't know. I think you're mixing up his intelligence with his pure sociopathic tendencies, which I think maybe is what came through more than, again, whatever his master plan was. I think the guy is really just a crazy person. He's just a crazy guy, and he almost got off on this idea of getting off, you know? And so, like, he almost couldn't help himself but to say a few things here and there that would be slightly incriminating or backtrack things. And essentially, I really do think that, like what you said, I think he realized it. He was like, wow, I can do anything because I have this much money. I can literally get away with murder because I have money.
Yeah, and maybe even when he was talking about it, he was like, this is so far removed from me that there's no way, even if I say that I'm lying, that I could get in trouble for this. Like, this has been closed for years.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he's just like, no one's really worried about me. And the show doesn't really fill in the gaps of time, like what's happening over the course of almost 20 years between when Susan Berman dies and when his wife died. So I'm just going to assume the guy was just jet setting, just living it up, just having a great time spending his money. So, I mean, I think obviously because it focuses on these cases, your focus as a viewer is on the cases as well. But the reality is he was obviously living a life outside of this show for a long time. So these are just, I mean, really, he only did 2 interviews, right, for this show. So, he's not really thinking about all that stuff whenever that stuff comes up. He's just like, yeah, whatever, just throwing stuff out there. He's just kind of clueless,
Yeah, it left me with so many questions. I want to know what he was doing during all those times. And I'm just so curious about him doing the interview, period. He didn't need to do an interview.
Yeah, he volunteered for it.
He was found innocent, and he was just like, okay, yeah, I'll do this. Like, why not? Like, I kind of want to tell my side of the story. But his entire side of the story is lies. Like, why did he want to do this? And, like, there was no part of his telling the story where he tried to make himself look good or look innocent necessarily. Like, he didn't, but it didn't even seem like he was trying to. He wasn't trying to make himself appear any better.
Yeah, I think what it was honestly, I mean, going back to the first episode of the show, when Jarecki talks about Durst reaching out to him after his movie came out. I think like he saw the movie, and I think maybe he's like, oh, these actors are portraying the situation, they're getting all the accolades, they're getting all the credit for this, and I think he was like, yo, it's about me, you know. clearly, if you made this movie, you have interest in the subject, so make a movie about me. Give me my time to shine. So I really think that's what it is. So you're right. Though he was still backtracking and lying, I think he was doing it for him, for his own ego.
He wanted credit. He wanted to, I guess so. It's so weird because his character he's so meek and so unassuming, and it's just so hard to imagine him murdering people. Yeah. And it's also hard for me to imagine him having that ego. But I guess he also felt like, maybe he wanted credit. Maybe he wanted.
Yeah, I mean, well, I think that's part of the.
Maybe even he wanted to get like some kind of credit or satisfaction from even coming out and saying everything that he said and being like, I still got away with everything.
Yeah, I really do think that's like a large part of his motivation. Let's go back to the getting arrested after he was on the run for stealing a $6 sandwich, right? So, like, just break that down as much as you can. This dude had $350,000 or something like that cash on him when he was arrested for stealing a $6 sandwich, or even the other thing where he was calling the offices of his, his job, when clearly he was a millionaire at that time. He didn't want to spend 25 cents for a payphone back then. So it's not about, I don't even think it was that he's frugal necessarily. I really do think it's this crazy like sense of entitlement or something where he's like, I'm not going to buy a sandwich. I'm not going to pay for a phone call. I'm me. I have money. And that sort of ties into that old adage, I guess, about rich people being the stingiest or not wanting to spend money. So. Yeah, the dude was crazy, man. And again, going back to your earlier point, like, to me, probably the standout aspect of the entire show is the case in Texas, and just seeing like the parts of the case and seeing their defense, and then seeing the reactions of the jurors. Yeah. Like, what the hell is going on with these people? Like, I mean, this is the stuff that honestly makes me call into question our legal system from top to bottom. You say you need a jury of your peers, but when your peers are this incompetent, I'm not sure I can would want to put anyone's fate in their hands.
Yeah, I'm just that was really fascinating. I mean, the whole thing is fascinating, just with incompetence across the board, and just the lack of even like considering this man as guilty or as a suspect in the other two murders besides the one in Texas. But even the one in Texas, I can't imagine sitting on a jury and being like, okay, he admitted he murdered this guy. He admitted that he killed him, is in self-defense. But then he chopped him up. So why would he chop him up if it was self-defense? Like, I mean, and I know they painted this whole story of him being on the run and he didn't want his identity to be found out, so he thought he'd just hide the body. Yeah, but I just think if you're hiding a body, there's a lot more going on.
Well, look, no, let's start. Let's not be the person that just assumes that that sounds like someone saying if you're running from the cops, then there must be a reason. So I don't want to get that deep into that aspect of it, but the whole dismemberment angle and just listening to what the jurors were saying, they're like, he's not on trial for dismembering a body. He's on trial for killing this man. Like, the idea, like, this is what frightens me about humanity, okay? I'm like, these people sat in there. This dude said, I killed him. It was a struggle. And then I sawed his body up into itty-bitty pieces and threw it in the water. And people were just like, that's kind of messed up. But what led to that? But the reason that happened was something else. And I'm just like, man,
that was some crazy stuff.
And so one of the things about him that stuck out to me a lot was his lack of charisma, right? Yeah. And yet it seemed like even like some of the jurors, they seemed to, sympathize with him. And then let's go back to the stepson of Susan Berman, right?
Who just totally bought into his.
Yeah, it was totally into his whole deal. And it's like, again, like what, like. But then he ended up giving him money, you know? So this is my question about the entire thing. Is it just about the money, Alex?
Well, I don't think it is, because I think, I think that he would have offered some kind of money to anyone who was going to be his friend. I do get the impression that he was the kind of person who would buy people in his life if he needed them. Okay. He had the thing with Susan Berman, where he was sending her money consistently. And I think it was no issue for him. I think giving people money was not an issue, as stingy as he seemed. Yeah. But, the point that the one woman made, who was a friend of hers, and she was like, he was reaching out to all of us looking for an ally. And in my brain, that makes so much sense. And I think women are just naturally more suspicious, period. Okay. And I think that, if you died and someone called me and was like, hey, like, I'm an old friend, like, I'm just trying to figure out what happened. Do you know if there's any suspects? I'd be like, who are you? Like, look on the news. Like, I'm not going to tell you anything.
Yeah.
But whereas, like, the son was like, oh, you know, it's my mom. Like, somebody cared about her. Like, talk to me. And whereas her friends were like, something's up with this guy.
Yeah, yeah.
And so in some way, it kind of makes sense. But I also just can't imagine meeting this dude and being okay with him, being like, yeah, this guy's all right. I trust this guy.
Yeah, yeah.
And the son seemed okay. He seemed pretty normal in the head, you know? So
Fairly,
like, for me, I'm like, it has to be that before he ever even met him, he manipulated him and said like, oh, I'll give you this money. Like, if we're to meet you, your mom would want you to be taken care of.
I don't know, man.
He was just manipulated.
But and I think maybe that's the weird thing too. Like, he didn't seem especially manipulative from anything we had seen of him. Like, I mean, sure, that the after effects of any given thing seem that way, but like, even again, the last episode where Jareki's talking about how he, you know, was close to him and sort of trusted him. Even like, it was a funny small moment when he was like, when he lied about being in Madrid when he was actually in LA.
And he was hurt.
But before then, he was like, yeah, he's pretty consistent about like that kind of stuff. He's like, he doesn't lie about where he's going.
No, this guy lies about everything.
And this is after he discovered the letter that clearly indicated that he killed the woman. So there is something about being in the room with this guy or something, you know, or I always talk about this idea just in life in general. People, like when someone lies to you in your face, I just think a lot of people, they just naturally can't wrap their heads around it. Like, it's like when someone's like, I didn't do it, or whatever it is that they're talking about, they, like, it makes the person who's listening to them almost, they have to accept it.
Themselves.
Yeah, they're like, am I being weird? Like, he seems so sincere.
Yeah.
You know, so this guy's just like, he's like, no. But speaking of which, let's talk about the tells. Let's talk about his tics, his twitches, all these things.
Again, I mean, he wasn't questioned by police very rigorously ever until the Texas thing. And it sounds like he was never questioned very in depth, even after the fact, about Susan and about his previous wife's death.
Yeah.
But I just have to imagine that anyone who's halfway competent would see him like, no, I wasn't that. No. Like, as soon as he lied, he twitched.
Yeah. And constantly. Like, if you know, for those of you who maybe didn't pick up on it, like, if you watch the show and you just, you know, watch any of the clips of him during the interview, when he is lying, you can see him making a weird face where he's like blinking his eyes, and just like look at him say a phrase that seems like a pretty like valueless, static statement. Like, he won't do the same thing. He'll just be like, oh, I went to the park. Yeah. You know, and he'll just like.
He was also spoke so smoothly when he'd lie. This was something I noticed not until like the latter episodes, but he would say whatever he was lying about very fluidly, whereas other times, like when it was something that he was being honest about, he would kind of like stutter and like pause and like he was really thinking about it. Whereas it was as if like his lies were planned out and he could just like spit them out. And even at the very last episode, like it was like he was totally caught off guard with the letters, and he was like, I don't know how you would tell this part, but every other lie. Well, he was thinking of for 30 years. Yeah. He knew how to answer every question he could have ever been asked.
With the letter thing, he was kind of like, that was my writing because I wrote that. But that, I don't know. And it's just like, he could sit there and just look at it, and obviously like that moment of his stomach dropping where we know he knows this is clearly my writing, you know? And so he started burping. He started like making the weird, like, I don't know. There was like this weird, like immediate physiological reaction from just like, I've been caught on the spot. Yeah. And so of course then he goes to the bathroom.
Did you feel like he was set up, the mic in the bathroom? What was your feeling at that moment? Did you feel sorry for this guy at all?
Oh, well, of course I don't feel sorry for the guy at all. And that's not just because he's a freaking killer. I wouldn't feel sorry for this guy if he wasn't a killer. But no, I mean, he needed to be set up, you know. But this actually.
Do you think it was planned? Do you think that they thought, let's accidentally let him go to the bathroom with his lab mic? Or do you think that they were like, oh, we need that mic, and he just happened to walk out?
Well, they clearly didn't say, oh, we need that mic. So I don't think they set him up. I also don't think that they went out of their way to make sure he didn't have that mic off of him whenever he walked away. But I also think that he went to the bathroom pretty quickly. Like, I mean, again, I really think that it was like that. If you've ever been like in a situation where you just did something like really messed up or something really crazy happened, you heard some weird news, people usually have some sort of physiological reaction. They vomit, they have to go to the bathroom, something, whatever. Yeah. So I think that's what it was. And, you know, obviously going back to the previous episode when he was talking to himself, clearly he talks to himself when he's nervous or like
he's
something strange is happening. And he just has to verbalize. So, and he just wasn't aware of the fact that there was a microphone that was still on him and still recording. So, that's neither here nor there. But I guess I want to finish up the discussion by talking about the timeline of when this film was made and talking about HBO's responsibility and when it was released. Because there's something. They make it a point, I think, to not really indicate when the last interview occurred and sort of the timeline between the last time they talked, between the previous time they spoke and the last time that they spoke. And I think it's because, they obviously got this material some indeterminate amount of time ago.
Yeah.
And for the sake of their television show, they decided not to release it instead of, let's say, giving over this information to the authorities.
Yeah.
So who knows how long they had it? How do you feel about that? And has anyone out there, have you thought about the idea that HBO had this information, even going back to when they found the envelope? That could have been enough, let alone the actual, audio confession, and they didn't.
Well, I'm curious. I'm very curious about that, and I'm also curious about everybody else who was involved, even with the envelope and the handwriting analysis and the other attorney from New York, because they all had to see it and be like, what are you going to do with this? This guy is guilty. What can we do with this? And the filmmakers had to be like, no, hold on, like, we're going to talk to him again. Please don't say anything to anybody. So there were so many people who who knew that he could be implicated in the crime. And they were all holding on to that information. But then the final piece, of him actually confessing to killing everyone.
I don't know what they could have done.
The timeline, they had to have had this for at least close to a year. And I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what the legality is. I don't know what the morality of that is. I mean, I would assume that they just figured nothing bad will happen between now and the time that this comes out. He's already
won't kill any
scared.
More people.
But just imagine if he had. Imagine if he killed someone from the time that when they got this information.
That's what I was thinking. There's like another body showed up in between.
And then they've been complicit in some kind of crime because they didn't turn this over immediately and say like.
I'm not going to say they're complicit in some crime, but they found some evidence. Like in a general sense, are you responsible as a citizen of America to you saw a guy jaywalking to call the cops and be like, that guy jaywalked? Obviously, this is much more severe than that. But I don't think that they're necessarily responsible for turning in these huge chunks of evidence to the police. But I do think more than that, it's not about what they didn't do to get him caught so much as it's about what they did for the benefit of their own entertainment, for what they did for the benefit of their TV show, for their ratings. Like if he would have gotten, because in real life, Robert Durst got arrested this past Monday, right after this show aired. So, that's a lot of hype for this show for the people who haven't watched it. Hey, I got to watch this show. What's going on? This is like crazy. So if you reveal or get the guy arrested, let's say before the show debuts, 2 months ago, then are people going to be?
In their favor,
I mean, okay. Well, how about last year or 2 years ago, whenever they may have actually gotten this information and they were that far away from actually cutting this thing together? Because my prediction, I don't know anything about the process. I think that after they got that audio confession, they actually kind of went back and turned it into a show. I think it was originally, created as a documentary film. And then they sort of figured out a way to sort of add padding to it and make it an event that would, go over multiple episodes. And so, because HBO is all about this event television and this, again, they're not so much concerned about how many people watch it, how many people are talking about it, And so a lot of people are talking about the Jinx. Hey, we're talking about the Jinx.
We had a lot of buzz.
Yeah. So, I don't know.
It's interesting. I just kind of want to find out who else this guy's murdered. No, I'm just curious about all the other like possible cover-ups he's had.
Yeah.
Because
seriously.
Yeah, I mean, you only killed 3 people.
You only killed 3 people, but
you got away with all of it. You have so much money. You're just hanging out, traveling the world. How many other people did you chop up?
Exactly. Robert Durst probably has like 20 bodies on him. So it'll just be a matter of time before we figure out exactly who those bodies are. I'm sure. But that's it. That's all your thoughts.
Yeah, that's my thoughts. If you haven't watched The Jinx or watched all of them, watch it. Recommend it to your friends. It's really entertaining.
Binge watch it if you get a chance. It's definitely worth it. It's a really good show. Check it out. So for all of your TV, entertainment news, any of that good stuff, be sure to check out themoderntruth.com. And as always, you can follow me, MJ, at The Only MJ on Twitter, and Alex at
Alex Storm, TMT, as in The Modern Truth.
There you go. So let us know what you think in the comments. And until then, till next time, folks, have a good one.